Welcome to Saturday of the Spruce Meadows Masters. It is an exciting day. We have a winning round competition with our international athletes, of course the Parade of Nations, and the famous BMO Nations Cup. It really is fantastic. It's the day that everybody gets to wear their colors, their flag, bring their flags out and wave. And you know, Great Britain has won the BMO Nations Cup 11 times in the 45-year history. So we'll have to see who wins today, but it is an exciting event. It's the one time in our sport where we get to compete as teams, and it was always a nerve-wracking day for me when I rode in the Nations Cup, because there was an added pressure that you were competing with your teammates to try and win for your country. But I hope that you'll sit back and enjoy a wonderful day of our Spruce Meadows Masters.
You can call it dreams or goals or objectives, whatever you want, but I think it's important to have a goal or a dream. Something that there's some possibility that you could accomplish.
At the Spruce Meadows Masters.
Hello and welcome to Saturday of the 2020 Masters at Home. I'm Connor Charlton, Competitions Manager at Spruce Meadows. On Saturday we celebrate British Day at the Masters and showcase top international riders with two feature competitions, the Suncor winning round and the team competition, the BMO Nations Cup. On the schedule today, we have the 2014 Suncor winning round and a pair of all-time great BMO Nations Cups. But before we get to that, let's take a look back at some of the best Masters moments from 1976 to 1999.
Welcome to the 1976 Spruce Meadows Masters, and this afternoon we'll be featuring highlights of the
I hope so, Ian. This is going to be really exciting.
I just loved horses when I was a little kid. I just talked about horses all the time. I wanted to be around them all the time.
As a kid, my dad and my grandfather were involved in horses. I started to ride, I was, 3 or 4 years old, and did it for fun because the horses were around.
I'm just an animal lover. I always have been as a kid, and working with animals and being around animals, and I'm really into sports. Sports have just been a huge part of my life since I was a small child. So there's no better combination, sports and an animal lover. Here we go.
I think that our discipline is fantastic at mixing contradiction. You know, we want them to jump high, but we keep making it so the fence is knocked down easier and easier. So they gotta be kind of chicken not to hit the fence, and they gotta be brave enough to jump over it. So we're talking about contradictions. So what I love about show jumping in particular is that we're dealing in shades of gray.
Show jumping, the phenomenon captivating those with a passion for horses. Horse and rider become one in an unbreakable, loyal relationship as the sport strives for both to push their limits. Obstacles test the minds of horse and rider and their ability to work together as a team. It's about stretching the mind and pushing the body, developing communication between horse and rider, and knowing the art and science of the sport. Like all sports, show jumping starts with a love and is driven by a passion.
The irony is I got into show jumping for the same reason that I continued to do it. I just loved horses. You get to have fantastic communication with animals that you respect and love and cherish. So I consider myself lucky to have chosen this sport.
With roots in military and hunting traditions, show jumping is a century-old Olympic sport with an international following. The sport now takes place over multi-day tournaments, the biggest of which are sanctioned by an international body, the Fédération Équestre Internationale. FEI-sanctioned tournaments are graded, with 5-star tournaments at the top level. They include fences up to 1.6 meters in height and award major prize money for both a Nations Cup team competition as well as a Grand Prix individual competition on the last day of the tournament. Every September in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the Spruce Meadows Masters means the most significant week in international show jumping. With some 400 accredited media, crowds of over 200,000, corporate sponsors, live broadcasts, and 100 of the world's best horse-rider combinations, the Masters defines a sport as much as it creates a culture. It begs the question, why Calgary? Why Canada? And what exactly comes together to create this weekend? While there are over 700 FEI-sanctioned tournaments around the world each year, only a few rise to the top in terms of level of competition, attendance, and prize money. The weekend of the Spruce Meadows Masters consistently draws more than 60,000 people daily. It includes a 200-booth trade fair, an executive round table, and competition among the world's best show jumpers. The Masters now awards more than $2 million annually, with Spruce Meadows' total prize money surpassing $75 million since 1976. It's an exhilarating weekend with thousands of factors aligning, from sponsorship to athletes, from a majestic venue to an enthusiastic fan base that fills it. A tournament on this scale takes a unique combination of vision and resources, both common assets to the Spruce Meadows community.
Welcome to the 1976 Spruce Meadows Masters, and this afternoon we'll be featuring highlights of the $10,000 Fleischmann's Grand Prix. And with me to provide the expert...
The first Spruce Meadows Masters was held in 1976. With a population of 470,000, Calgary, Alberta was a medium-sized city situated in the heart of Canada's west. Being a low-profile sport at the time, show jumping was practiced in stables throughout Alberta. Regional weekend competitions provided limited opportunities for amateur riders throughout the prairies.
And now?
For sure, there were excellent riders in Western Canada, but if you wanted to get any place in the sport, and get any place probably means to me, because I grew up with athletics, it was to be an Olympic rider. And any of those people that wanted to try to do that really had to travel out of Alberta to become an Olympic rider. All the trials, all of the competitions were in the East. And so we thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a place in Western Canada where riders could train and compete, and they wouldn't have to maybe travel quite as far. We never dreamed of it being what it is right now.
Spruce Meadows was built to create opportunities for high-performance riders in Canada. To create and maintain that top level, it had to be an attractive option for top riders from the East, as well as the United States and Europe. Two elements were vital to the sustainable success of the facility: building a venue that matched anything in the world level, and offering a purse on a completely different scale from anywhere else. Spruce Meadows would become the venue for both.
We put together a compendium of pictures, sketches, thoughts of what a pretty expansive Spruce Meadows should look like. What we were really looking for was to try to bring to the people here a sport that did not differentiate people from each other, where everybody could participate in it and enjoy it. And the grounds and the way it was laid out seemed to us at that time to be very important. But we didn't have that much money. We had to do it in a piece-by-piece way.
Building piece by piece meant inviting corporate partners who were willing to join in the dream.
I mean, you had to have the athletes and you had to have the fans, it's true. But there also had to be corporates that believed in us, because we could not afford to put on the prize money. I mean, it's been a hard thing to build these facilities. I mean, there's no government monies involved. It pays taxes. And I'm very, very proud of that aspect of Spruce Meadows. It must be one of the few venues in the world that's self-sustaining. And the creation of the crowds, the belief in us, really goes to an extraordinary group of companies that have helped us. These were people that I had in one way or another met in my own business life, and I told them of this dream that we had to create a venue here for a sport that I have to tell you that I don't think many of them knew of. And you know, when you go back to that time, 30 years ago, not too many people even came to Calgary.
Attracting riders took investments from sponsors who bought into and believed in this show-jumping venue. Attracting sponsors willing to invest the necessary amounts of money required a vision of branding those companies through television.
I also knew that you couldn't eventually have corporate support for any kind of sustained period unless you could give them television. I never dreamt that Spruce Meadows would go to 70 countries of the world then. I was thinking of Canada. In fact, I was thinking of how do we get it into Ontario and British Columbia and Quebec.
This mutually beneficial circle became known as a benefits loop. Top sport required top riders. Sponsorship would provide dollars, which would attract top riders. Top riders would attract media, who could provide attractive opportunities for sponsors. A cycle of benefits that fed itself would become the foundation for a sustainable facility. Canadian show jumpers embraced this venue, which had already set a bar higher than anything they had experienced.
I remember, you know, being just sort of awestruck by, you know, the dimension of the international ring and the natural obstacles. I had never seen a Devil's Dyke before.
As you mentioned,
all of those kind of things that, you know, we were just exposed to for the first time. And for me, it was great because I was a young up-and-coming rider, and it was you know, my home field. I felt that, and you know, it set the standard. It set the standard very high, and we all had to just sort of, you know, jump up to that standard. So I think that that was what, you know, for me, the most important element about Spruce Meadows in those days.
While Canadian riders had their standard raised, international riders were also taking a chance on this new venue.
Well, they said there's this place in Calgary that's putting a horse show on, and they've got a Nations Cup and a big Grand Prix. They've got good prize money, so off everybody went. I mean, it was out in the middle of nowhere, and it was. I mean, for us, it was fun to go because, you know, we'd never been that far before, and I certainly hadn't. I was only a kid, and well, we've been going back ever since. The rest is history, I suppose, as they say.
A history that has seen riders like Nick Skelton from his start as a teenager to becoming one of the biggest legends of the sport. Right from the beginning, some of the biggest names in the sport took a chance on Spruce Meadows.
What can we say about this rider? This is Eddie Mackin of Ireland, and the horse is Carroll's Boomerang. And
the first major international rider we saw here that dominated was Eddie Mackin and Boomerang, and that was absolutely amazing to see. He came over here and they were still in their prime, and Eddie was a fabulous rider, still is, and Boomerang was one of the dominant horses of, in history, and he, I think, won every class that tournament and did it just easily.
International superstars like Mackin faced off with Canadian athletes like Michel Vaillancourt, silver medalist at the 1976 Olympic Games. Fresh off his podium performance, Vaillancourt took home the first Grand Prix of the Spruce Meadows Masters, sponsored by Rothmans of Pall Mall, Canada Limited. Top prize value at the Grand Prix was $4,800, a significant purse in 1976.
Well done. Of course, Branch County's record from the pudding is ideal.
The Nations Cup was sponsored by Bank of Montreal, a Canadian financial institution. West Germany won, but 1978, 79, and 80 saw the start of the British domination of the competition and of the sport at Spruce Meadows. This domination would last most of the rest of the century.
Here again, the winners of the Bank of Montreal First Canadian Nations Cup, the team from Great Britain.
The story of the BMO Nations Cup is a story of British and American domination from the early days until the mid-90s. These powerhouse teams occasionally let other countries overtake them, but it wasn't until the late 90s that the other countries started winning consistently. The British won almost half of the first 20 Nations Cups at Spruce Meadows. There were names like Caroline Bradley on Tigre. Michael Saywell, Malcolm Pyra, and Lionel Dunning were also part of this era, an era of beginnings. Bank of Montreal, now called BMO, established their long-standing relationship with Spruce Meadows in 1976, a foundation for the relationship that still exists today.
The BMO Nations Cup, ladies and gentlemen, to the United States and Hall of Famer George Morris.
The Grand Prix also expanded its reputation. In 1981, new sponsorship arrived as Du Maurier stepped up to become the new face of the Grand Prix. The competition was renamed the International and quickly established itself as the biggest Grand Prix in the world. September 13, 1981 is a day to be remembered, the first International, the start of a new era of competition.
Du Maurier International, and it's going to become a symbol in show jumping in North America.
The fourth fence made victims of several competitors. Most horses were able to clear the third fence, but the height made it difficult to secure the footing to clear the next obstacle, shattering dreams for those unable to beat the challenge. 12 horse-rider duos made it to the second round, all prepared to do what it took to win. Dutch veteran Anton Eben and his horse Jumbo Design turned up the heat on his rivals. He cleared the course, producing the first double clear of the competition. As he had already demonstrated in stadiums throughout Europe, he was a force to be reckoned with.
Double clear, our first in the Du Maurier International.
Champion. Well, here's a look at a former world champion.
David Broom on Queensway Philco powered through the course in style. He went clear for the second time in the Du Maurier International, forcing a jump-off with Eben.
And he's clear. So we're going to have a jump-off.
Both remaining riders are from Great Britain. Next on.
A young Nick Skelton started next. He hit the very first rail, and you could hear the collective disappointment from the crowd. The promise of this great young rider would have to wait another 4 years before he'd take center stage on Everest St. James.
Well, just that 4 faults on that. My heart goes out to Nick for that.
Only Dunning remained as she pushed for her deserved spot in the jump-off. Her energetic horse, Roscoe, came through to make it a 3-person jump-off. So, with 2 from Great Britain and 1 from the Netherlands, the stage was set. 3 of the best horses in the world were about to face off, and Queensway Philco was first to emerge with David Broom aboard.
Pam Dunning have something to prove to these 10,000 to 15,000 fans watching this Du Maurier
Each clear jump took them one step closer to tasting their prize and pushed the crowds closer and closer to the edges of their seats.
Being fairly cautious. Now he's getting a little bit of a gallop. Not wasting much time, but he is a little bit slow. I think he could cut
They
some
once
points
again
off.
rode clear with a run time of 31.08 seconds. The stakes were high yet again, and Broom was proving why he would eventually go on to compete in 6 different Olympics for his country.
And Vince went to
Dunning, feeling the pressure from her competition, took to the course with her game face on.
Oh, drifts out a bit. She's quite rapid.
She's not wasting any time.
Roscoe was clear the whole round till the final fence.
Just bring him home, Pam.
Solid wrap.
This put the duo in second, with another rider still to come.
Over that pole. But look at the time, Mike. 36.88 seconds.
The clock won on that one, you're right. 36.88. And our last rider now. David Broom is leading in this jump off. And here's Antoon Ebben of the Netherlands on Jumbo Design.
It was up to Ebben and Jumbo Design to take the win from Broom. The question was whether to take the risk of having a rail by trying to go faster than Broom, or try for a clear round and come in second ahead of Dunning. With each clear rail, it looked as though they were going for a safe round. They rode clear, but sure enough, his time of 39 seconds didn't stand up to Broom's 31.08.
And he's clean, he's clean.
And he really pushed to the finish. Let's check that time.
39.
Nobody could match the speed of Broom and Philco. David Broom tasted glory on the massive turf of the international ring while leaving footprints in the history books forever. Winner of the first international at the Spruce Meadows Masters.
And the man that really made it the class it was, David Broom. And David, congratulations. An excellent round. What about strategy going into that jump off?
Well, it's always important to go clear if you can, and it's just a question of going clear as fast as you can. And well, I just tried that. I thought I went a bit slow into the second. I took a long time to get to the combination, so I knew I'd left a little bit of room, you know. But very often people don't realize that when they follow you, and it came off.
$175,000 class. Nick Skelton of Great Britain and the horse.
The stage was set for Great Britain to take home 10 of the next 18 internationals. While Spruce Meadows grew from its unlikely beginnings in the foothills of the Rockies to the unparalleled championships of the new millennium, Great Britain cemented its place in the story of the sport.
The richest payday.
Oh, I love what I do. I like everything that goes with it. It's you know, there's not 2 days that are the same. You know, you don't get up in the morning, you have your daily schedule, but it's never the same. You know, you go home and you're full of surprises all the time.
I've had a fantastic life in this profession, working with horses. I've been lucky enough to make a living working with horses. And I feel I owe it back to the horse to try to make the horse's life just a little bit better. And if you try to go along those lines, you usually end up you know, doing the right thing and making horses more comfortable. And when you do that, they usually give back. They're an amazing animal.
Spruce Meadows is
the 2 decades of the Du Maurier International saw show jumping reach another level. The Grand Prix at the Spruce Meadows Masters was big, but with a new sponsor on board, Spruce Meadows was determined to create an event that would set a new standard in show jumping. While a new partnership was forming between Spruce Meadows and Du Maurier, a longer relationship was established with BMO. Having sponsored the Nations Cup since its inception, BMO's relationship to show jumping continued to grow in a mutually beneficial way.
I remember there was a story, a little girl came into a bank in Montreal somewhere in Canada, and she wanted to open her first bank account. And the manager said, well, why did you come to Bank of Montreal? And she said, because I wanted to bank at Big Ben's bank. And, you know, those stories, that story got right through to the top level management of the day. And just little things like that. It's a little thing, but it's a huge thing. And so I think if you can do that, then you earn your keep, so to speak.
Live from Spruce Meadows, the 1985 Bank of Montreal Nations Cup. The world.
By 1985, BMO was firmly established in the show jumping community as a long-term significant partner, and the BMO Nations Cup was one of the most anticipated events of the year.
It all began last Monday night, 2 o'clock in the morning to be precise. These horses arrived from overseas, from Europe. It's been a long, long journey, as Nancy says, 12,000 miles. Many of the horses had to be vanned and trucked to Amsterdam, where they met the Stretch DC-8 plane.
A Nations Cup features teams of 4, with each team representing a country. Each rider gets a chance to ride the course twice, and the team's total scores are tallied to determine the winner. The 1985 BMO Nations Cup would mark another milestone in the British domination of the competition. They had 4 victories to their name out of the 8 that had taken place, and they were sitting at the top of the world rankings heading into the Masters. The now famous brothers Michael and John Whitaker were joined by Malcolm Pyra and Nick Skelton, soon to become legends in the sport. And in the first round, they showed why they would become legends. All 4 riders went clear for the British, with Canada and the Swiss close behind in a tight race. But after so many went clear in the first round, horse designer Pamela Carruthers raised the heights. This caused a world of trouble for the first few riders. Michael Whitaker took out 2 of the 3 fences on the triple combination, and while the British seemed to stumble, the hint of another couple of legends appeared. A young Ludger Beerbaum riding Saloniki took on the tough course. Easily through the triple, the water, and the final skinny fence, it gave an idea of the legend he would become. A true force to be reckoned with was in the making. Another Olympic rider took the course for Team Canada. Ian Miller and Big Ben's chemistry was unmistakable. Just on the edge of greatness, this young horse would go on to win 2 Du Maurier Internationals and 6 Derbies at Spruce Meadows, in addition to 2 World Cup final titles. They had 4 faults, leaving Team Canada out of the running, but they were clearly on the edge of their incredible run that would start in 1986. It came down to the anchor riders on 2 teams, the British and the Swiss, who had come out of nowhere. The Swiss team was counting on Willy Melliger to keep them in the race. Then came John Whitaker. With his anchor ride, he would need 4 faults or less to secure the championship. The hopes of a nation were on his shoulders, and his mettle was being put to the test. He managed to make it until the last fence with no faults, but ended up knocking it over on his way to the finish. Those 4 faults were his only ones, and so the British would remain victorious again and cement their status as a major world power in the sport of show jumping. The British would continue this dominance for years to come. This 85 BMO was a glance at the future, though, as superstars such as Ludger Beerbaum and Ian Miller were just around the corner from their incredible successes. Meanwhile, Spruce Meadows continued its growth, adding additional tournaments, increasing prize money, and attracting big names to the Masters every fall. For 5 years, the international title was held by legends like David Broome on Queensway Philco, Malcolm Pyra on Towerland's Anglazark, Norman Delajoyo on I Love You, Heidi Robiani, and Nick Skelton's first international win in 1985, this time on Everest St. James. In 1986, the Du Maurier International achieved intercontinental status and the promise of another level of show jumping prize money. With the benefits loop firmly in place, sponsorship took on yet another level.
We are now discussing among us, and we're considering the possibility of a new comprehensive support package for the September events at Spruce Meadows, which will stretch over a decade from 1988 to 1997. And this package will amount to more than $10 million.
This sponsorship set a precedent for a new level in the sport. Prize money at this level created an environment where not only the best riders kept coming, but the sport managed to reach another level of stature around the world. Great Britain continued its domination of the Masters with John Whitaker riding the legend Milton.
This horse had the sort of the hallmark, the characteristics that you were looking for in a great jumping horse. Very elegant, lots of scope, and I don't think anybody really knew where this was all going to go, but the history books will tell you that this was one of the legends in the sport of all time, of any era, of any generation. One's gone, any to come. John and Milton will be forever remembered as genuine superstars.
Today, it's the Super Bowl of show jumping, the $180,000 Du Maurier International.
1986 would be their year. It was a mere 2 degrees Celsius at the start of the competition. Gail Greenough, winner of the World Championships, took the course, although unsuccessful in taking yet another title. Competition was fierce, with Nick Skelton as defending champion. Pierre Durand on Japaloop de Luz was also one to watch. Some riders did manage to conquer the freezing conditions, as 7 riders went clear in the first round.
By both Greenough and Skelton at the World Championships.
The first pair in the second round, Malcolm Pyra on Towerland's Anglazark, slipped on the wet grass and fell into fence 5. Anglazark's injury from this crash effectively ended his career. Young Laura Tidball-Boliski from Canada, on her horse Lavendel 48, went clear for the second time and set the new standard for the remaining 5 riders. She cleared the final fence, the Du Maurier signature fence, which had caused problems for several riders before her. John Whitaker and Milton were last to go. If they had a single fault, Boliski would win. If they could manage a clear round, they would force a jump off. Milton cleared the fences in typical fashion. An almost effortless round put them into a jump-off. Tension was high. Laura was first, and as she cleared each rail, it looked as though she might continue her clear streak. She was clear, but would 45.1 seconds be fast enough for the 22-year-old to take the victory? John Whitaker was up again. Moving along the course with such confidence, he gave the impression there was nothing that was going to stop him from winning. Along with the rest of the stadium, Boliski watched to see if her time would hold up. "7 seconds faster." Whitaker pulled out a victory that left no room for questions. He and Milton were on form. Great Britain would once again dominate the weekend, and the Spruce Meadows story would be intertwined with the rise of a legendary horse. Another legendary horse was also beginning his run at the top of the sport. As more grandstands were built, buildings began appearing. Crowds increased from thousands to tens of thousands, and a horse from eastern Canada took to the international ring in the first of a run of successes that would continue into the early 90s.
Big Ben transcended the sport with his personality, and he was oversized for the job. He was a great, big, ruggedly handsome animal, But he was dependable as can be. If you came to watch Grand Prix jumping in Canada or you turned on your television to watch it, the chances are Big Ben would be there, and the chances are he'd be in the top 3 every time. So you got used to seeing him. And then, I would tell you, even through the television lens, you got a feeling about the horse. And when you saw him in real life, you really got the feeling. He connected with people, and he got the measure of a person. And it was amazing to watch him do it. I've never, before or since, seen a horse that had that ability.
The 1987 Du Maurier International would be Big Ben's first major international victory. His continued success at the Derbies and World Cups would secure his place in the history books, but his victory at the 1987 International demonstrated to the world that it was now time for Canada to shine. The first Canadian win since the start of the International. They were a reflection of Spruce Meadows, now coming into its own as an international venue, a place for top international show jumpers to compete. The American team won 3 straight Nations Cups from 1986 to 1988, but it wasn't yet time for Great Britain to relinquish their hold on the Masters. In 1989, Great Britain took center stage again as Michael Whitaker rode to victory on Monsanto. Michael and John Whitaker, along with Nick Skelton, were quickly dubbed the Three Amigos and would put the hammer down for 4 years in a row at the Nations Cup, taking the British team and Spruce Meadows into the 90s. The 90s at Spruce Meadows kicked off with international recognition, a symbol that Spruce Meadows was indisputably a force to be reckoned with. British monarch Queen Elizabeth II visited the facility, present for the inaugural Queen Elizabeth II Cup, a Grand Prix held annually at one of the newer tournaments of Spruce Meadows, the North American.
We're at Spruce Meadows for the richest
The Masters continued to grow in size and prize money. The Du Maurier International in 1991 had a purse of $680,000, and with 25,000 fans crowded around the international ring, the top riders in the world vied for what was now a major international prize. As Spruce Meadows now matured in the global spotlight, it would be Canada's turn again to shine at the International. Big Ben was now an established Canadian hero, and as he stepped into the ring in September of 1991, the crowd came to life. Tension was high when the plastic edging along the water jump was knocked in. However, the judges ruled that Big Ben's feet successfully crossed the lathe before knocking it into the water. They were off the hook, but only by a fraction of an inch. The second round brought just as much tension. No riders had yet jumped a clear, and with Miller last to go, the pressure was on to jump a clear round. If he jumped clear, he would win. The crowd rode every jump with the pair. The audience rose to their feet as a wide-eyed Miller rode in disbelief of his accomplishment. The first rider to ever win 2 international titles. Miller's win at Spruce Meadows brought him $225,000, putting him over the $1 million mark in winnings at Spruce Meadows alone.
love the animals and you love working with them. And, you know, to me it was like, I don't know, you know, working with the young horses, I especially like that. It's like you're taking a lump of clay and you're sculpting it into, you know, a work of art. I mean, if I can be a little over the top. But that's kind of how I feel about it sometimes. And so, you know, that definitely is attractive to me.
The horse is such a wonderful animal, and show jumping is, you never stop learning if you're smart. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful life. It's certainly better than a real job.
As if in response to the Canadian challenge, the British Three Amigos each took a turn in the following 4 years at taking the international trophy home, starting with a win by John Whitaker in 1992. Like Ian Miller, it was his second title, but on a different horse from his first win, this time on Gammon. Skelton matched the performance the next year, winning on Dollar Girl.
She was a great mare. I mean, really good character, very careful, and she was good to ride. You have to sort of be quite hard on her to ride her, but you know, the more you worked at her and rode at her and pulled her about, the better she was.
Your 1993 champion of the Du Maurier Limited International, Nick Skelton of Great Britain.
The British rivalry at the Du Maurier continued as John Whitaker set yet another record in '94, winning his third international on a third horse, Grenuche. Riders from around the world were on the starting list, including a young Canadian named Eric Lamaze. 6 other riders managed to conquer the wet terrain and clear all of the fences in the first round. Of the 12 riders back in round 2, there were few surprises. The group included the #1 rider in the world, Franca Slotak, up-and-coming Mexican star Jaime Azcárraga, and the son of champion Brazilian rider Nelson Pessoa, a young Rodrigo Pessoa. With the addition of perennial crowd favorite Ian Miller, there were a myriad of threats to take home the top prize. The first 3 riders went and proved that mistakes were easy to come by, as the fences were higher and wider and the time allowed would be hard to make. Ian Miller, the third one in on Future Vision, would hit 3 rails for a disappointing round.
Well, I was very, very pleased with the first round. He jumped great. Had a little bit of an unlucky rail at the Liverpool, and then the time allowed is excessively tight in the second round, and I was working on making that time allowed, and I'd say that's probably where my problem originated.
The next 2 riders, however, seemed to fare somewhat better, as Eric Neve and Rodrigo Pessoa managed to hit only 1 rail each. No small feat in this difficult second round. That is, until Whitaker's turn. In true fashion and making it look easy, he squeaked in just under the time allowed for his second clear of the day. In front of the crowd of 47,000, it was now up to the remaining riders to match this feat of strength and speed put up by Whitaker and Everest Grenuche. Thomas Fuchs was up next, along with the triple German threat of Ludger Beerbaum, Søren van Rohen, and world champion Franca Slotak. As if on cue, Fuchs went clear to post an even better time than Whitaker to ensure that there would be yet another jump-off on Spruce Meadows' own Super Sunday. As the rain began to pour, the 3 Germans could not cope with the slippery turf, and with that, Fuchs and Whitaker were destined to go head-to-head in an epic jump-off. Whitaker was first. He rode clear. If Fuchs could not go clear, the glory would go to Whitaker. And on the 6th fence, Fuchs hit a rail, and that would mean John Whitaker would become the sport's first 3-time champion of the Du Maurier International.
Ladies and gentlemen, his name appears with next Milton.
The British were riding high. The next year, Michael Whitaker rode to his second victory at the International on two-step. By the mid-90s, records seemed inevitable every time the British took to the ring. 3 of the 4 riders to have ever won 2 internationals were British, one of them having won 3 times. However, their Nations Cup victories were thinning out. France, the US, and Ireland all took home trophies in the early 90s. As Spruce Meadows matured into a truly international facility, the scorecards developed an equally international face. But while their team riding began to leave openings for other countries to take the Nations Cup trophy home, Great Britain had one more Nations Cup to win before the international field of the new millennium cracked the British stranglehold on the Spruce Meadows Masters. The stands were packed again for the 1996 BMO Nations Cup, as excitement was building for what would once again be a show of international supremacy. By the start of round 2, the main contenders were still in the race for the Cup. The Irish and the Germans were tied with 12 faults apiece in second place. Rising stars like Ludger Beerbaum were trying to figure out how to catch the British team that featured the Whitakers and Nick Skelton. Round 2 started with a bang as Franke Slutak from Germany navigated the difficult course skillfully and cleared every fence with seeming ease. Ireland's Peter Charles answered the call with his own clear round as he stood in defiance of the German team and kept the tie in place. The perfect streak would have to continue for Nick Skelton and the British team in order to keep the lead over the 2 competitors. Skelton began his round, showing a confidence he had gradually built on years of international wins. He cleared fence after fence as he went on to prove that he and Great Britain were still players. The triple combination posed no threat, and with the clear on the last Canadian flag fence, he followed the suit of the first 2 riders with his own perfect round. The field would have to respond again. It seemed as though the fences would never fall as another rider, Germany's Lars Nieberg, made it through yet another round without hitting an obstacle. This would keep the Germans in the 3-country race for the win. Ireland's captain, John Lettingham, was next to try his luck. And just as it seemed the fences were stuck, Lettingham began to knock them down. With a total of 12 faults, the Irish team had no chance of coming back to beat the British and German teams. This would bring up Ludger Beerbaum with a chance to go clear and give the Germans a hope to stay in the competition. If one fence was dropped, they would lose. The pressure was evident as the crowds fell silent. After a couple of fences, it seemed as if he might pull it off. Then it happened. Beerbaum finally hit an oxer and watched the Germans' win fall away. Skelton and his country would remain on the top of the world for another year at the 1996 BMO Nations Cup.
To Britain for the 10th time, very, very well deserved.
50,000.
This would mark the last Nations Cup victory for the British, their 10th since the start of Spruce Meadows. It would sign the next stage in Spruce Meadows history, a stage of yet another increase in prize money, crowds, sponsors, and a field of new legends from a host of countries. There were still records to be matched, however, and while Ireland and the US took home 2 of the international titles in '96 and '97, 1998 would be Skelton's turn again to match a record Michael Whitaker set only 3 years before. 3 international titles. The 1998 International turned into a showdown among Nick Skelton, German Helena Weinberg, and Jeff Billington. Weinberg was on top of her game and went clear in round 1. She took the course once again in round 2. Off to a good start, she cleared the fences with ease. When she knocked down the jump after the combination, the disappointment was obvious. A 4-fault round that would have to hold up against Skelton and Billington. Skelton was next to go. While Weinberg nervously watched, Skelton cleared fence after fence. A clear round meant Weinberg was out. Billington was left to go. Three fences in, he knocked a rail down. Skelton won, his 3rd international title, matched only by fellow countryman John Whitaker.
Nick Skelton, please step forward and raise the Demorier International Trophy while Mr. Blay and I hold the check in trust. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, for the 3rd time. Nick Skelton of Great Britain, champion of the Demorier International.
The end of the 90s was the end of British domination. It was also the end of Demorier's sponsorship. New legislation prevented them from continuing their partnership with Spruce Meadows beyond 2000. Perhaps a fitting end to their sponsorship was the international title going first to Germany in 1999, then to Brazil in 2000.
Presentation of the Demorier International to Rodrigo Pessoa of Brazil.
The international spirit of Spruce Meadows was poised to take yet another leap in the new millennium. This international face was also reflected in the diversity of winners in the BMO Nations Cup. The Netherlands and Germany took home the final 3 Nations Cups of the 20th century. The Nations Cup would become hotly contested, passing from country to country in a new era of the $1 Million Weekend.
And present one of the most coveted pieces of hardware in sport, the Bank of Montreal Nations Cup to Team Germany, 1999 champions. All the best. Thank you.
The first 25 years of the Spruce Meadows Masters is a story of foundations, of building gradually on grand vision. From a few hundred gathered by a ring just outside the city of Calgary to an international venue where every top show jumper in the world battled it out in front of tens of thousands. Spruce Meadows was now ready to take on the new millennium, an era of new records, new sponsors, and new beginnings.